Hello and welcome to the series on the 3 types of email for WordPress. In this series, you'll learn how to set up email for custom domain names and use it within WordPress for any emails that your website will be sending and receiving. What are the 3 types of emails? You might be thinking to yourself, well, there's certainly a type of email that I know about, like, I have a Gmail or a Hotmail email address. I know how to send and receive email and do CC and BCC and those types of things. And that really is what I would call traditional email, or I call that send and receive. Send and receive email. Now, send and receive email has 2 traits that we can use to define it in contrast with the other 2 types of email. Send and receive email is sent from a person to another person. And so when we talk about send and receive email, we are talking about those traditional Gmail email addresses and having your email addresses, attachments, photos, and things like that stored somewhere on a computer. And that's called email hosting. And so for traditional send and receive email, emails need to be hosted somewhere, just like your website is hosted on a computer server that is somewhere connected to the internet, like in a big data center somewhere. If you're using send and receive email, then your email is also hosted somewhere. When you use a free email service like Gmail, Gmail is taking on the expense of hosting your email for you. You can also host your own email. And if you didn't want a, yourname@gmail.com email address, for example, if you were providing email addresses for a business or your own business at a custom domain name like example.com, then you would want an email address like yourname@example.com. And so to illustrate that a little bit, let's just say that, one of the things about send and receive email is that, there's a person that sends an email and another person that receives it. And the person that receives the email, they need to have hosting. To receive that email and store it somewhere so that they can open it later, they need to host that email. The other thing you need with send and receive email is that person might reply. And so it's a two-way street. This person also needs to have hosting for their email. And so, Gmail is an example of a hosted send and receive email service. And really, that's all send and receive email is. It is it's email that can be sent and can be received. And so therefore, it needs to be stored somewhere. And so let's look at the second type of email. The second type of email is defined by having a website, or a computer, in other words, send the email automatically to a person, to a single person. And so we normally think of those types of emails as ones that are automatically sent from a website after a transaction, like a purchase receipt or filling out a contact form on a website where an automatic notification or a receipt goes out from the website and then is sent to a single person. And so that is called transactional email because the transaction has taken place and then the website has automatically sent the email out. So if we look at the drawing on the iPad again, this one is called transactional email. And because this is website to a person, of course, that person receiving the email, they've potentially put their email address either in buying a product or filling out a contact form. And so by having an email address, they already have the send and receive type of email. And so on that end, of course, their own email is a send and receive type of email. So they're sitting there waiting to receive this email. Do they have hosting? Yes, they do. But on the sending or outgoing side, this is actually sent not by a human, but by a website or a computer, you might say. And so one of the things that really defines transactional email is that it is a one-way process. Transactional email goes in one direction from a website to a single person. And so while send and receive email is one-to-one, transactional email is also one-to-one. That's one-to-one email. Now, if that transactional email system sends an outgoing email from a website, and it is, it's able to use a from address that has a send and receive email account attached to it, then that person might be able to reply. Here's an email that that person is maybe sending with a reply back to somewhere. And so a lot of times, the transactional email systems will use an address that looks something like no reply at, example.com. Now, that email address is not associated with any email storage, and it cannot receive any email, and therefore does not require hosting. You don't need to host the email at no reply at example.com. Now, if you use a real from address, if you use something like, info at example.com, then that email address is actually a send and receive type of email. Now, if you look at no reply, I'll color that one green because that one's more of a transactional email address, not a send and receive email. And so, transactional emails are sent in one direction, so I'll mark that one green. And if someone were to reply back, potentially that email may not be received if it's sent to a no reply address. But it's your choice as the website owner. You could use info at your domain name.com, and then you can receive email at info. You can either host that email somewhere, or you can even have that email forwarded to another address that does have email hosting. So transactional is a bit of a combination of send and receive and one-way outgoing email. But really, transactional email is honestly defined as a one-way outgoing only, sent from a computer or a website to an individual. And then, of course, in contrast, the send and receive emails, I'll mark those in blue because they go in two directions. Now, they're one-on-one. Emails in send and receive go both directions, but they're always one person to another person. Transactional emails might involve a computer or a website and a person, but it's still just a one-on-one process. But here's the difference with the third type of email. The third type of email is where it's sent from a computer, sure, but this time it goes to people. Not just a single person, but a group of people. A single email repeated to a group. And we often call that bulk email, or the best description of it is marketing. Marketing email. The third type of email is called marketing email. We call it this because it's often used to send an email, exactly the same email, to a group of people for marketing purposes. And so services provide this type of service. Companies like MailChimp, Aweber, Constant Contact, those companies provide a service, which is sending email from a single person or computer over to a group. And so, if the group of people is over here, and we have a computer, and of course a human can write these emails, obviously, but the computer takes care of the heavy lifting, and it sends not just, a single email at a time. It sends a bunch of emails, and they are received by these people over here. Now, of course, you might say, okay, well, those people over here, they must be in blue because, they're receiving this email in their email box, and of course they have to host it. And that's true. They're using their own send and receive email program, like Gmail, to receive those emails. But over here on the left, Since this is one-to-many, I'm going to color this orange. So here's the big difference. Marketing email is one-to-many. So in other words, this is a system that sends out a copy of an email for marketing. That's why we call it marketing email, or you could call it bulk email, to a group. And the thing that we call this is, what is this over here? This is this is an email list. And so there might be some other interactions that happen. For example, here at the website, there is probably an opt-in contact form, And so if a user, one of these users in the group over here, fills out the opt-in form, well, then they might actually get a receipt from the opt-in form. They might actually get, that opt-in form actually qualifies when it sends a receipt to the user, a single receipt. That actually qualifies as a transactional type of email. So there might be an initial transactional email that goes out to the users. But then in the future, when you write an email in your marketing email program like MailChimp, then send that to the email list. That is marketing email or bulk email. Now, in the next video in the series, we're going to go ahead and expand on each one of these types of email. Send and receive email, transactional email, and marketing email. Well, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time in the next video in the series on 3 types of email.